Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring someone pretty fascinating, Swami Vivekananda.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
When you think about him, you probably think about reason, a champion of reason even, and of course a powerful advocate for Advaita Vedanta.
Yeah.
But get this, his devotion to the goddess Kali was intense.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's almost like, wait, how do those two things go together?
Yeah.
You've got this intellectual giant, this champion of reason, and he's drawn to this deity that's just, well, powerful, fierce energy.
It kind of challenges our assumptions a bit, you know? Like, we think intellect and devotion can't exist together. But Vivekananda's story shows us that might not be the whole picture.
Okay, so let's break this down. How did this all play out in his life? And what does it tell us about how his spiritual philosophy evolved?
Well, I think a good place to start might be with his early life.
Okay.
You know, before he became Swami Vivekananda, he was Narendra Nath. And as a young man, he actually faced some really tough financial struggles. This is what led him to Sri Ramakrishna, his guru. He needed some help.
Right.
But here's the thing. Narendra wasn't really into idol worship. He was more focused on Brahman, you know, the absolute reality in Advaita Vedanta.
Right.
That idea that the universe is all a manifestation of Brahman.
So he was coming at it from a very philosophical angle.
Yeah, a very abstract angle.
Abstract. But then you've got Ramakrishna encouraging him to go directly to Kali for financial assistance. It's kind of a curveball.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, would you ask a deity you're skeptical of for money?
Right. I mean, it's almost like a test, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can this very rational guy actually bring himself to seek help from a deity that, he's not even sure he believes in?
Exactly.
So imagine you're Narendra. You're following your guru's advice. You walk into the Dakshineswar Kali Temple. It's 9 p.m. And you're there to, well, improve your finances.
Right.
But it doesn't really go as planned. Well, instead of seeing just a statue, he encounters Kali. And, he encounters her, this living, powerful presence. It's like the Divine Mother is right there in front of him, ready to grant him anything he wants.
You'd think that's when he asks for the money, right?
Exactly. But instead of asking for financial help, he's overwhelmed by Kali's energy. And he finds himself praying for wisdom, devotion, and enlightenment.
Wow. Talk about a change in priorities.
Seriously. And it gets even more interesting.
Oh.
This happens not just once, but 3 times.
Wait, really?
Ramakrishna actually sends him back into the temple thinking he just forgot.
Oh.
But each time, Narendra ends up praying for the same things. Wisdom, devotion, enlightenment. Something's definitely changing inside him.
Forgetting your grocery list is one thing, but this is 3 times. It seems like something much deeper is happening here.
It does. It's like this experience in the Kali temple becomes a turning point. He's pushed beyond just an intellectual understanding of the divine to something more experiential.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think this experience is like a seed.
Oh.
Yeah, a seed of his transformation and evolution, pushing him beyond the stricter interpretation of Advaita Vedanta. You know, the one championed by Adi Shankaracharya.
For folks who might not be familiar with that, could you explain the difference?
Sure. The traditional Advaita Vedanta, the kind that Adi Shankaracharya talked about, that one focuses on the world as an illusion and sees God as impersonal.
Okay.
Now, Ramakrishna, he offered a more inclusive perspective, I'd say. He was suggesting that the divine's in everything and that life is a kind of divine play.
So are we talking about rejecting one and embracing the other? Or is there more to it?
Well, what's so fascinating about Vivekananda is that he blended both.
Oh.
Yeah. He created this philosophy that emphasized seeing the divine in every being and serving humanity as a form of worship. It's not about escaping the world, but finding the divine in it, expressing that connection through action. And this actually leads to the birth of the Ramakrishna Mission. It's a real living embodiment of this evolved philosophy.
That's interesting. I'm curious, though, how does his initial resistance to Kali fit into all of this?
Yeah.
How does that skepticism turn into the profound devotion we see later on?
Years later, he makes this really powerful confession to Sister Nivedita. He admits to being made a slave by Kali after years of resisting her.
Whoa. Just imagine that.
Right.
The rationalist, the intellectual giant, surrendering to the power of this goddess.
It's incredible.
It really is. And then there's that famous quote of his, "I do nothing. She does everything. I am just her instrument."
I love that quote.
It really captures that essence of surrender, right?
Absolutely. And it shows us that his devotion didn't cancel out his intellect. They worked together. It's almost like his spiritual journey was guiding him towards a more complete understanding, one where both his head and his heart were fully engaged.
I love that.
Okay.
And this brings us to something I find really funny. Vivekananda's relationship with his guru, Ramakrishna.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
You know that story where he playfully exposes both himself and Ramakrishna?
Oh, I love that story. You have to tell it.
It's like they're both poking fun at people who try to put him in neat little boxes.
Yeah.
Ramakrishna, who seemed all about devotion of cocked, was actually grounded in knowledge Gyan.
Right.
And Vivekananda, who is seen as the champion of Gyan, confessed to actually being driven by bhakti.
It's like a cosmic joke.
I know, right? But it also shows how deeply they understood each other and how they saw knowledge and devotion as interconnected. It's fascinating. What's even more fascinating is how this anecdote reveals something deeper about Vivekananda.
What do you mean?
It's like he's acknowledging that beneath all the intellectual work, there's this current of devotion pulling him towards Kali. Even his playful teasing is revealing a spiritual truth.
Yeah, you're right.
It reminds us that what we see on the outside doesn't always reflect the complexity of what's going on inside.
That's true.
It makes you think, if Vivekananda could find this harmony between intellect and devotion, what does that mean for us? I mean, most of us aren't running into deities and temples, but his story still feels relatable.
Oh, totally.
Don't it?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. We all have those moments where we're holding on to beliefs and then, bam, life throws a curveball and those beliefs get challenged and transformed. Maybe it's a sudden loss or a deep connection with nature or even just a conversation that opens your mind to something new. These moments, they can change how we see the world and ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So while we might not be face-to-face with a goddess in a temple, we all go through experiences that push us beyond what's comfortable and force us to re-examine what we believe.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, those experiences are leading us towards a more complete, holistic understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Maybe that's Vivekananda's greatest gift to us.
Yeah.
A reminder that spiritual growth isn't always a straight line. Sometimes the most profound insights come from the most unexpected places.
It's like Vivekananda is saying, don't just think about spirituality, experience it.
Exactly. He encourages us to be open to those deeper, more experiential encounters with the divine, however we define it. Maybe it's through art or music or nature, acts of service even, a deep conversation. That can be a way to connect with something bigger.
I love how open that is.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works for you, not following a rigid set of rules.
Exactly. And remember, Vivekananda didn't abandon intellect. He embraced both knowledge and devotion, seeing them as complements, not opposites.
So it's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
the head and the heart working together.
Precisely. And that's something you see all throughout his life. He took this concept of Advaita Vedanta and he made it accessible, translated it into action. He called it practical Vedanta.
Can you say a bit more about that? What does practical Vedanta actually look like?
Well, he believed that the ultimate goal of spirituality wasn't just knowledge, but to realize the divine within ourselves and in everyone around us. And that realization, that should lead to action, specifically service to humanity.
So it's not just sitting around thinking about the nature of reality. You have to actually do something.
Exactly. He believed that serving others was the highest form of worship, a way to express that inherent divinity that we all share.
And that's where the Ramakrishna Mission comes in, right?
Exact.
It's like a living example of that practical Vedanta.
It is. It's a testament to Vivekananda's ability to take these really profound spiritual ideas and turn them into action. The mission, it focuses on education, healthcare, disaster relief, interfaith work, all rooted in this idea of serving humanity as a way to serve the divine.
It's an incredible legacy.
Yeah.
And it all stems from his transformation. It makes you wonder, though, what was it about Kali that drew him in so powerfully? We talked about the experience in the temple, but what was it about her specifically?
That's a great question. Remember, Kali's often depicted as fierce, even terrifying. She's the destroyer of ego, the force that dismantles illusions to reveal the truth.
So maybe, for Vivekananda, she represented that power to break through the barriers he'd built up, the resistance to devotion, the clinging to just an intellectual understanding of spirituality.
Yeah, I like that. It's like Kali was challenging him to step outside his comfort zone, to surrender to something bigger than himself.
And in that surrender, he found a deeper, more complete understanding of spirituality. It wasn't about getting rid of intellect, but about integrating it with devotion, with heart. It's almost as if Kali helped him tap into this deep compassion that eventually led to his philosophy of service.
And that compassion, it went beyond just humans.
Yeah.
He saw the divine in all beings.
Mm.
It didn't matter what their species was or their social standing. He advocated for animal rights, spoke out against injustices. He believed that true spirituality had to include every aspect of life, how we relate to the natural world, our responsibility to those who are less fortunate.
It's incredible how his philosophy is still relevant today. He took these ancient teachings and made them relevant to modern life, showing how spirituality can be a force for positive change in the world.
And he did it all with such joy, such enthusiasm, never lost that playful spirit. And, that sense of humor.
Okay.
It's a good reminder that even when we're dealing with these serious issues, we can still approach life with a lightness, a sense of wonder and curiosity.
So as we're starting to wrap up our deep dive into Vivekananda's unexpected journey, I want to leave you with this. How can we draw inspiration from his life and bring his teachings into our own? How can we cultivate that balance of intellect and devotion, of inner peace, and taking action in the world?
It's a great question. Maybe it starts with something small, an act of kindness, a moment of reflection, a commitment to learning and growing. The path's always unfolding, and we each get to choose how we walk it.
Beautifully said. And that's our deep dive into Swami Vivekananda for today.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you're inspired to explore his teachings more and discover for yourselves the power of universal spirituality. It's like he's saying, don't just think about spirituality, experience it.
Right.
Really makes you think, what could that look like for us in our own lives?
It's about being open to those deeper, more experiential encounters with the divine, however we define that, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's through art or music or being out in nature.
Yeah.
Maybe it's through acts of service or even, a really deep conversation. Those can be powerful ways to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
I love how open-ended that is.
Yeah.
It's about finding what resonates with you personally, not about following some rigid set of rules.
Absolutely. And remember, Vivekananda, he didn't just throw intellect out the window.
Right.
He embraced both knowledge and devotion. He saw them as working together, not against each other.
It's about that balance.
Yeah.
The head and the heart. Exactly. And you see this throughout his life. He took this, seemingly complicated concept of Advaita Vedanta.
Yeah.
And he made it accessible, like he translated it into action. He called it practical Vedanta.
Okay, so tell me more about that. What does practical Vedanta look like in real life?
He believed that the ultimate goal of spirituality wasn't just about gaining knowledge,
Yeah, okay.
but about realizing the divine within ourselves and in everyone around us, and that this realization, it should lead us to action, specifically service to humanity.
So it's not enough to just sit around and contemplate. You have to get out there and actually do something.
Exactly. Vivekananda, he believed that serving others was the highest form of worship, like a way to really express that inherent divinity we all share.
And this is where the Ramakrishna Mission comes in, right?
Yes.
It's putting that practical Vedanta philosophy into action.
Absolutely. It's like a real testament to Vivekananda's ability to take these profound spiritual ideas and actually make them happen in the world. The mission, it focuses on education, healthcare, disaster relief, interfaith work.
Right.
All of it rooted in this idea of serving humanity as a way to serve the divine.
Such an incredible legacy.
It really is.
And it all comes back to this amazing transformation he went through.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, though, what was it about Kali that was so powerful for him? We talked about his experience in the temple, but what was it about her specifically?
That's a good question. Kali, she's often depicted as fierce, maybe even terrifying.
Right.
She's the destroyer of ego, the force that breaks apart illusions to show us the truth.
So for Vivekananda, maybe she represented the power to break through the barriers he had created, like his resistance to devotion, his clinging to a purely intellectual understanding of spirituality.
I think that's a really insightful way to look at it. It's
Yeah.
like she was challenging him to get out of his comfort zone, to surrender to something bigger.
And in that surrender, he discovered a deeper, more complete way of understanding spirituality. It wasn't about rejecting the intellect, but about bringing it together with devotion, with heart. It's like Kali helped him access this wellspring of compassion.
Yeah.
And that compassion became the foundation of his philosophy of service.
And that compassion, it wasn't limited to just humans. Vivekananda, he saw the divine in all beings. Didn't matter their species or their social status. He was an advocate for animal rights. He spoke out against injustice.
Wow.
He truly believed that real spirituality had to include every aspect of life, our relationship with the natural world, our responsibility to care for those in need.
It's amazing how relevant his philosophy still is today. He took these ancient teachings and he made them speak to modern life.
Yeah.
He showed us how spirituality can be a real force for good in the world.
And he did it all with this amazing sense of joy and enthusiasm. Like he never lost that playful spirit, that sense of humor. It's a good reminder, even when we're dealing with serious stuff, we can approach life with a lightness, a sense of wonder.
Absolutely. So speaking of his impact on the world, we haven't even touched on his famous trip to the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That seems like the perfect place to pick up next.
Totally.
What do you think?
Let's do it. That trip was a turning point, not just for Vivekananda, but for the way the West saw Eastern spirituality.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. All right, so picture this. 1893, Chicago, you've got the World Parliament of Religions, and Swami Vivekananda, this pretty much unknown monk from India, takes the stage.
It was a huge moment.
It really was, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, this was the first time Eastern religions were being presented on a global stage like this. What do you think it must have been like for him to be there, representing Hinduism to a Western audience?
I mean, talk about a bold move. The pressure must have been intense.
I bet.
He was stepping into this space where Hinduism was often, well, misunderstood,
Right.
misrepresented even. But
Mhm.
he had this incredible opportunity to share his vision of this universal spirituality rooted in, the wisdom of Vedanta, but made relevant for the modern world.
And he just crushed it. His speeches were a sensation.
Oh, yeah.
And he started by saying, "Sisters and brothers of America." The crowd went wild.
It's such a powerful moment, just those few words, It instantly created this connection, this sense of shared humanity. Like,
Right.
it transcended all those cultural and religious differences, and that was the core of Vivekananda's message.
Hmm.
This idea that there's a universal spirituality that recognizes the divine in everyone.
It's amazing to think his message resonated so strongly with people from all these different backgrounds.
Mhm.
What do you think it was about his approach that made him so effective?
Well, he was obviously a gifted speaker,
Hmm.
but I think it was more than that. He could take these really complex philosophical ideas and make them clear, engaging even. He didn't shy away from intellectual depth, but he also knew how to connect with people on an emotional level, to inspire them with this vision of a more compassionate world.
And he didn't just talk about it, he lived it.
Right.
He founded the Ramakrishna Mission, which was all about service.
He really walked the walk. He embodied his philosophy.
And I think that resonated with people, that authenticity.
Absolutely. He wasn't just some detached figure preaching from afar.
Right.
He was out there working to help others to make a real difference.
Mm.
And that, resonated with people who wanted a more practical, meaningful way to express their faith.
His whole approach to spirituality was so inclusive, so ahead of its time. He embraced Eastern and Western thought.
Oh, yeah, he saw value in both. He was a bridge builder. He challenged those stereotypes of the East as being mystical and otherworldly. But he also critiqued what he saw as the West's materialism and spiritual emptiness.
It's fascinating.
He envisioned a world where different cultures, different spiritual traditions, they could all learn from each other,
Right.
It would enrich and expand our understanding of the divine.
It really makes you think, what would the world be like if we could actually embrace that vision of universal spirituality, of recognizing our shared humanity?
It's a powerful vision, but also challenging, right?
Definitely.
It asks us to look beyond our limited perspectives, to see the inherent worth in everyone, regardless of background beliefs. It calls for compassion, understanding,
Yeah.
a willingness to engage in dialogue even when we disagree.
Vivekananda's life, his teachings, they offer such a powerful guide for navigating, the complexities of our world. He reminds us that spirituality isn't just about personal enlightenment.
Right.
It's about actually getting involved, working to create a more just and compassionate world.
And he does it all with this incredible joy, this sense of humor. It's like he's saying, hey, even when things get tough, we can approach life with a lightness, a sense of wonder.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Swami Vivekananda's unexpected journey, I want to leave you with this thought. How can we be inspired by his life? How can we take what he taught and weave it into our own lives?
Yeah, how can we cultivate that balance,
Yeah.
The balance of intellect and devotion, of inner peace and outward action.
It's definitely a question worth thinking about. Maybe it begins with just a small act of kindness, a moment of quiet reflection, a commitment to always learning and growing.
I love that.
The path unfolds as we go, and we all have the power to choose how we walk it. Well, that's it for our deep dive into Swami Vivekananda. Thanks for being with us on this journey. We hope you're inspired to explore his teachings more, to discover the transformative power of universal spirituality for yourselves.